You know the story. The Tuskegee Airmen, the legendary Red Tails, their distinctive crimson-painted aircraft screaming through European skies, racking up an unprecedented combat record as bomber escorts. You've heard about their dogfights, their aerial victories, their unmatched skill in the cockpit. But what if I told you their most devastating weapon wasn't a 50 caliber machine gun or aerial tactics? It was something far more powerful and infinitely more subtle. What if the Red Tails waged a psychological war so effective that it shattered enemy morale, rewrote Allied expectations, and fundamentally altered the course of how an entire nation viewed itself? The Tuskegee Airmen flew 15,000 sorties and destroyed over 250 enemy aircraft. Those numbers are impressive, certainly, but numbers don't capture the full scope of their impact. Every time those red-tailed P-51 Mustangs appeared in formation, something shifted in the minds of everyone who witnessed them. German pilots felt dread. American bomber crews felt hope. Military commanders on both sides reassessed their assumptions. And back home in America, millions of citizens were forced to confront uncomfortable truths about the lies they'd been told regarding who could be a hero and who could defend freedom. This is the story of how a group of young black men fought two wars simultaneously, one against Nazi Germany in the skies over Europe, and another against the insidious racism that insisted they weren't capable of fighting at all. Their greatest victory wasn't scored on any mission report. It was won in the psychological transformation they forced upon friend and foe alike, proving that sometimes changing minds is more powerful than destroying targets. In war, the battlefield is not always visible. Sometimes the fiercest struggles take place within the minds of those involved, where morale and psychological tactics can tip the balance as much as any weapon. When the 332nd Fighter Group deployed to Italy in 1944, they entered a battlefield already defined by psychological warfare. Nazi propaganda had spent years declaring the racial inferiority of non-Aryans, insisting that black soldiers were, incompetent, cowardly, and incapable of the intellectual demands of modern warfare. Luftwaffe pilots had been fed this propaganda relentlessly. They expected easy victories when encountering black American pilots. That expectation became their first casualty. The Red Tails didn't just meet expectations, they shattered them so thoroughly that German intelligence reports began questioning whether the pilots were actually black, or if this was perhaps American disinformation. This cognitive dissonance created a crack in the Nazi ideological foundation. If the racial theories underpinning their entire worldview were wrong about this, what else might be false? Every red-tail victory forced German pilots to confront the gap between propaganda and reality, a psychological burden that honestly accumulated with each engagement. But the psychological impact cut deeper than simple surprise. The Red Tails developed a reputation that transcended normal military respect and entered the realm of mythic deterrence. American bomber crews began requesting the Red Tails specifically as escorts. They called them Red Tail Angels. They spread stories, some true, some embellished, about the 332nd's perfect escort record, claiming that no bomber under Red Tail protection had ever been lost to enemy fighters. While this wasn't literally accurate, the perception became its own form of psychological armor. Bomber crews flew with greater confidence, maintained tighter formations, pressed deeper into enemy territory because they believed the Red Tails made them invincible. On the German side, Luftwaffe pilots learned to identify those distinctive red tails from miles away. Unlike other Allied fighter groups that might peel off to pursue personal glory and individual kills, the red tails stayed with their bombers with religious devotion. This discipline transformed their tactical approach into psychological warfare. German pilots couldn't isolate stragglers from formations. They couldn't exploit the predictable behavior of fighters abandoning their charges to chase kills. The red tails' unwavering commitment to their mission created a wall of protection that seemed impenetrable, and perception in aerial combat is often more important than reality. The consistent failure of Luftwaffe attacks against red tail-escorted bomber formations created ripples of confusion and doubt throughout the German command structure. Intelligence officers struggled to explain how American bombers were penetrating deeper into German territory with lower losses. Some reports attributed this to new technology. Others suggested the Americans had developed revolutionary tactics. The truth, that a group of black pilots was simply outflying and outthinking the Luftwaffe, was literally unthinkable within Nazi ideology, creating a blind spot that Allied command exploited ruthlessly. This cognitive dissonance manifested in tangible ways. German pilots began showing reluctance to engage formations escorted by the distinctive red-tailed fighters. Mission reports documented instances where Luftwaffe squadrons broke off attacks upon identifying red-tail escorts, choosing to seek easier targets elsewhere. This wasn't cowardice. It was rational calculation based on experience. Engaging the red tails meant high casualties for minimal gain. But from a psychological warfare perspective, this represented a devastating victory. The mere presence of red-tail aircraft was altering enemy behavior before a single shot was fired. The long-term psychological erosion proved even more significant. By late 1944, as Germany's war effort crumbled and resources dwindled, Luftwaffe pilot morale was already fragile. Veteran pilots were dying faster than they could be replaced. Fuel shortages meant training was inadequate. Into this environment, the red tails represented something psychologically crushing, an enemy who seemed to never make mistakes, never show weakness, never fail in their mission. For German pilots already questioning whether the war could be won, facing an opponent who embodied discipline, skill, and unwavering determination accelerated the psychological collapse that preceded Germany's military defeat. Boosting the home front, a symbol of hope and progress. While the red tails were waging psychological warfare against the Axis, they simultaneously fought an equally important battle for the minds and hearts of their own country. American military leadership had resisted training black combat pilots, insisting they lacked the intelligence, courage, and technical capability for such demanding roles. The success of the Tuskegee Airmen didn't just disprove these racist assumptions. It weaponized that disproof into a psychological weapon against American prejudice itself. The War Department, recognizing propaganda value, began publicizing red-tail achievements. Newsreels showed confident black pilots climbing into advanced fighters. Newspapers reported their victories. Radio broadcasts shared their stories. For black Americans living under Jim Crow segregation, these images carried revolutionary psychological weight. Here was undeniable proof that black men could master the most technologically sophisticated machines of warfare, could outthink and outfight the enemy, could exemplify courage and skill at the highest levels. This wasn't theoretical equality. It was documented, undeniable, combat-proven competence. For white Americans, the Red Tails created a different kind of psychological pressure. How could you maintain beliefs about racial inferiority when black pilots were defending white bomber crews, when they were receiving commendations for valor, when they were demonstrating precisely the qualities, discipline, intelligence, courage, technical mastery, that racist ideology insisted they couldn't possess? This cognitive dissonance didn't instantly transform American society, but it created psychological space for change. It made previously unthinkable questions suddenly urgent. If black men can fly fighters, why can't they vote? If they can defend democracy abroad, why don't they enjoy it at home? The psychological groundwork the Red Tails laid during wartime became essential infrastructure for the civil rights movement that followed. When Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat in 1955, when the Little Rock Nine integrated Central High School in 1957, when Freedom Riders challenged segregation in 1961, they were building on psychological victories won over European skies a decade earlier. The Red Tails had proven that racist assumptions about capability were lies. That proof couldn't be forgotten or dismissed. It became a foundation for demanding the rights that capability should have always guaranteed. The story of the Red Tails did not end with the final mission or the close of the war. Their courage and excellence echoed through generations, inspiring countless individuals to challenge injustice and strive for equality. The barriers they broke in the skies helped to dismantle others on the ground, shaping the course of American history. Today, their legacy endures not only in the record books, but in the ongoing pursuit of justice and opportunity for all. The Red Tails remind us even now that the fight for freedom and dignity is never finished, and that real change often begins with those willing to soar above prejudice and doubt. Their enduring legacy, the mindset of a champion. The psychological warfare waged by the Tuskegee Airmen offers lessons that honestly transcend military history. They understood something really profound, that victory often depends less on destroying your opponent physically than on changing what your opponent and your allies and your own people believe is possible. They flew every mission knowing they represented more than just themselves, that their performance would be scrutinized, magnified, and used either to justify discrimination or, to shatter it. That psychological burden would have crushed lesser men. Instead, they channeled it into fuel, flying with a kind of perfection, born from understanding that anything less than excellence would be weaponized against their entire race. This is, honestly, the ultimate lesson of the Red Tails' psychological warfare, that how you carry yourself under pressure, how you perform when the stakes transcend personal survival, how you respond when every eye is watching and every mistake will be amplified. These psychological factors often determine outcomes more powerfully than technical superiority or numerical advantage. The Red Tails weren't given better planes or more resources than their white counterparts. They were given doubt, skepticism, and the expectation of failure. They transformed those psychological weapons, pointed at them, into psychological weapons they wielded, proving that excellence is the most devastating counter to prejudice. Today, when we study military history, we tend to focus on tactics, technology, logistics, the material factors that determine victory. But the Red Tails remind us that, honestly, the most important battlefield is often the human mind. They won a psychological war that changed what people believed about race, about capability, about who gets to be a hero. Those psychological victories proved more enduring than any tactical triumph, reshaping American society in ways that continue reverberating even 8 decades later. The next time you hear about the Tuskegee Airmen, remember this. Their greatest achievement wasn't the aircraft they shot down or the bombers they protected. It was the minds they changed. Enemy minds filled with Nazi propaganda that crumbled when confronted with undeniable competence, Allied minds that learned to trust and depend on men they'd been taught to dismiss, and American minds that began the long, difficult process of recognizing that the color of a pilot's skin has nothing to do with the content of his character or the skill in his hands. If this deeper look at the psychological warfare waged by the Red Tails has expanded your understanding of military history and human courage, subscribe to Through Time so you never miss our explorations of the hidden dimensions of history that shaped our world. And, share this story with anyone who needs to understand that sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't physical force. It's the unwavering determination to prove wrong everyone who doubted you could fly.